Welcome back, webheads, to the next episode of the Spidey Swing-Bys podcast. I'm your host, Christian Ashley. As we continue on through every appearance of Spider-Man from the very beginning, today we're going to be in Amazing Spider-Man 7, Strange Tales 115, and Amazing Spider-Man 8. So let us go ahead. Oh, yeah, I should say, I was not here the past 2 weeks. I was on vacation for 1 week, and I was with the youth on another week at our church at camp. So kind of hard to record in those environments where the internet really doesn't kind of work. And you also kind of need to be responsible for younger kids. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and head into this bad boy, starting with Amazing Spider-Man number 7. The release date for this is September 10th, 1963. The story name is The Return of the Vulture. Indeed, we do have the first returning villain for Spider-Man, written by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, penciled by Steve Ditko, inked by Steve Ditko, lettered by Artie Simek, also edited by Stan Lee. So, you may be wondering what else was happening in Marvel this month. Well, plenty. Well, we get to, at the beginning here, Avengers 2, where we get the Space Phantom appearing for the first time, infiltrating the Avengers, switching back between each one of them, causing discord amongst them, including a lot of distrust that already naturally existed about the Hulk, to the point where the Hulk feels like he's not appreciated anymore, and he leaves the team because, once again, he feels like they don't trust him. And that will, of course, lead into the next couple of Avengers issues and events thereof. Then we go from there to Journey into Mystery 98, where we see Thor dealing with some more relationship drama with Jane Foster, blah, 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 blah. Oh, I can't possibly be with her. Oh, Odin was, blah, blah, whatever. Sorry. It gets annoying after a while. And of course, he then contends with the Cobra for the first time. A very not as good villain for him. I mean, better than what was the last guy, like the Thug or whatever. Yeah. Then in Fury 4, I cannot speak today. The Howling Commandos lose one of their own when they infiltrate Germany to stop propaganda broadcasts from a very unwilling newsman. Then we get to Tales to Astonish 50. Where Giant Man and the Wasp must defeat the Human Top, who, of course, will later on become the more memorable villain, Whirlwind. Then in X-Men 2, the X-Men fight against the Vanisher as he tries to steal military secrets for profit and is kind of a lame villain and gets defeated by Professor X, like pretty much almost every villain at the beginning of X-Men. I know that's not always true, but it feels like it. Then in Fantastic Four 21, we have a great crossover where the Fantastic Four team up with Nick Fury to stop the mad machinations of the hate monger, who is revealed to be a clone of Adolf Hitler himself only less than 20 years after the end of World War II. So at the time, a very shocking reveal, and one that has been used, over the history of Marvel when people actually care about their continuity and actually care about, preaching, to an audience rather than preaching at an audience. Then in Tales of Suspense 48, Iron Man works to overcome the evil of Mr. Doll in a very forgettable story. And then we have Strange Tales 115, which we will be covering after Amazing Spider-Man 7. So moving on from there to actual Amazing Spider-Man 7, we get the cover with Spider-Man facing off against the Vulture, who's got a very interesting old man grin on his face. Peter wondering why the Vulture's back. Could it be that he knows how to defeat me? We get, at the very beginning here, a recap of how Spider-Man beat him the last time. The Vulture is in prison, and in so doing has found a way, working under those foolish guards, to the gullible fools, as he puts it himself, to recreate his original flying device, and that's going to lead him over the prison into freedom, where he's going to go and build some wings more powerful than before. Then we go to Peter at school with Flash Thompson, as he's messing with him about how he's not very good at gym. Peter's very upset with him, but of course we have that classic teenager to their radio, which I guess the kids did in the 60s, or maybe it's just a Stanism. It's kind of hard to tell at times. And telling about how the Vulture has escaped. And then Peter pretends to be sick. A Flash makes fun of him. Poor puny Parker. He can't handle any volleyball. So Peter leaves to go back home, puts on his Spider-Man outfit, refills his web fluid, makes sure that actually showing off his web shooters, and talks about how his camera is in his case and everything, explaining to the viewer what's going on. According to a spider sense, the street is empty. There's, of course, will be something that is retcon. I mean, it could still happen where you could potentially go out and people would wonder and it would work, but knowing the reason it's going off is because of it being empty. That's a separate thing. Um, yeah, then we get, of course, that little jokey panel of all you kids seeing him and the parents saying, "Oh, you're just being weird, little kid." At least you don't say it's a horror movie this time. So Spider-Man goes try to track down the Vulture. The Vulture instead goes to a jewelry showroom and steals from there using a gun. The cops can't risk shooting at him because if they do, they'd hit an innocent bystander because he's flying very low to the ground next to people in their cars. Spider-Man takes a picture of the Vulture as he gets to go near him, and he pretends to fall. The Vulture does. So Spider-Man goes after him, and the Spider Sense acts up, but not in time for him to not get punched in the face by an old man who does not have augmented strength at this point in time. And this, of course, this sucker punch messes with Spider-Man. He tries to send a web line up to save himself, but he falls onto his shoulder and kind of gets himself messed up. The cops, who, by the way, now could shoot at the Vulture since he's on a lamppost, do nothing about any of this and start to wonder, were they maybe on the same side this whole time? It's nonsense at its finest here. Spider-Man wakes up and realizes he landed on his arm, not his shoulder. Feels like it's broken, but he's got to go out there and realizes it's more like he's sprained. Like he doesn't feel like there's any broken bones. He goes back home. Aunt May is on the other side of the room, tries to come in. He leaps to the ceiling, and Aunt May proves that she has no peripheral vision of any sort, and knows how he's such a fragile boy. She worries when he comes home late. He's not like the roughneck Flash Thompson, and he manages to suit up in his regular outfit, go to the doctor. The doctor tells him he just got a sprain. This says he'll be in a sling for a couple of weeks, but it's like, well, I can't do that. The Vulture's out there. There's no one else who could possibly take down the Vulture. It has to be me because this is my book. So she scolds him for like getting involved in the school games and getting pushed around by Flash and all that. So stop doing that. Flash, of course, at school makes fun of him. He's starting to blush and they get all laughing at his face. He gets very upset at them. We then go back to, if you'll remember from last time, the Vulture had a secret base inside of a farm silo, an abandoned farm silo. Where? Staten Island, of course. So the Vulture is planning, his next scheme, and he decides, well, one of the biggest payrolls in New York is at the office of J. Jonah Jameson. He publishes the Daily Bugle and Now Magazine, because we're a little retconning there. Instead of it always being Now Magazine, it's the Daily Bugle primarily. And he's got to employ hundreds of workers. So there must be fat, juicy pay envelopes there waiting for the Vulture to cash out under a different person's name. Don't worry about it. So we see them, Peter talking to Betty at the Bugle, and she's kind of scolding him like, nobody could sprain his arm playing volleyball, which I don't know. Have you ever played volleyball? It's very easy to do if you're not careful. Not that I've ever done it, but if you play the wrong way, you land the wrong way, you could easily do this to yourself. Then, of course, he kind of teases her saying, no, actually it happened while I was fighting the Vulture for dear life. And she gets the old classic, ask a silly question. And so to protect the secret identity, say, let's just stick to the volleyball story, which, it's kind of cute. I mean, this is early on. This is not something that's brought up too many times as would later on in Marvel continuity. So I'll give it a little more slack. Jameson won't pay more than $10 for the picture of the Vulture. And then, of course, the Vulture shows up at that exact time to hear that he's Peter is taking a picture of him. He's not very happy of that. Jonah says he can't give the money that the Vulture wants because that would put him out of business. And they yell at each other in a very fun panel of Jonah kind of panicking, but the Vulture, very angry old man looking at him. And Jonah kind of pleading, well, we can make a deal, right? I can give you some publicity. And the fracas going on there. Peter then sneaks out so that he can suit up as Spider-Man, takes the sling off. The Vulture, of course, had thought that he had actually killed Spider-Man because, as mentioned the last time, he's very bad at confirming the kill, which maybe that's a good thing for us because, Spider-Man's still alive. So he tries to bring his gun out. Spider-Man webs his up, then tries to get Jonah out of the way, but almost uses him as a human shield. Vulture swipes at Spider-Man. He's able to get away, throws Jonah on the floor as the Vulture flies away. Jonah demands that the police be called. They're dueling it out in the midst of the Bugle. and Peter is able to get on top of him, and they get down to where the papers are actually made. And as this, the Vulture takes it outside for a bit, flies up high, and he has now pinned the Vulture's wings with his webs, and now has put them together. The Vulture can't fly, but he can create a parachute for the both of them, brings them down to the ground, and he hears Jonah asking for him to wait. Peter turns around and Webb's over there, and Jonah, of course, blames him for everything. He's going to hold him responsible for all the damage done to his building. It's all your fault for butting in. Spider-Man, of course, asks Jonah if he's a professional nut or not, which, open for debate, I suppose. Webs up Jonah's head face with his webbing, which of course it leaves it an hour, so he's not going to suffocate him or anything there. We get, of course, a comical asterisk in last because, obviously Jonah is swearing, but this is comics in the 60s. We're not going to show you because, it was a classier time compared to today. But that's his own issue. Peter then goes back inside, changes back in, puts a sling back on, then goes down to sit with Betty, who's hidden behind a desk, and he says, "Oh, I was hiding away in a closet while the fight was going on." He's just not the heroic type, but she's very into him because he's very soft and sweet, and he's not an action man, so why would he ever think that he should be involved with anything there, and making sure that the Bugle was safe? He's not Spider-Man. And of course, Jameson is very upset. They laugh at him, and she kind of looks at him and says, "Peter, sometimes I get the feeling you're laughing at a secret little joke that's all your own." And in a very suave line, he says, "If you keep using that cool perfume, Betty, I may break down and tell you about it someday." And of course, they have that real romantic moment between the two of them, and we get to the end of the issue. So, this issue, we have, like I said earlier, our first returning Spider-Man villain. This will happen in a bit with Dr. Octopus. We'll get the Green Goblin later on, showing up multiple times. And of course, in the first annual, we have the Sinister Six being formed. So for our first returning villain, we chose the Vulture. Sure. I mean, I like the Vulture, don't get me wrong, but I like Vulture as he grows as a character and what they choose to do with him, where it makes a little more sense for this guy to have more power, rather than just being a feeble old man who is somehow able to fly around with ease. And then, take punch from a superhero and punch him back and not break every, bone in his body. As would befit an older man in this scenario. So yeah, it's fine. It's not the best. It's not the worst. I mean, it simply is. I mean, it's better than what we're getting next. I can put it that way. And speaking of what's next, let's move over to Strange Tales 115. Let's go into all of our information there for that. The release date was also on September 10th, 1963. The story is On the Trail of the Amazing Spider-Man. Did I have that right? I think I may have copied that from the wrong thing. Oh, well, we'll see if I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, correct me, because there should be Sandman in the story. Whatever. Written by Stan Lee and Dick Ayers. Oh, by the way, I should mention, this isn't edited, so whatever comes out of my mouth, that's what you hear. Written by Stan Lee and Dick Ayers, penciled by Dick Ayers, inked by Dick Ayers, colored by Stan Goldberg, lettered by Artie Simek, edited by Stan Lee. We get to our story here. The cover is fine. We see the Human Torch under some water, looking like his flames are about to go out, going up against the Sandman. This, of course, is one of the great things about Marvel, is that you can have one of your characters fighting one villain this week and another villain the next week. And there are still characters that 60 years after the fact, Spider-Man has never fought face-to-face. The biggest one I can think of is the Mandarin. I'd probably throw Apocalypse in there too. If I'm sure there's been stuff he's been associated with things that have happened with them, but he's never fought them either alone or with someone else. It boggles the mind. The Mandarin I understand more because Marvel is all scared about using an Asian character who's a villain for whatever reason. It's not like we can't have villainous people of any ethnicity, or it's not your fault as the author to make sure that I don't, think of you as a racist simply for doing something, actually tell a good story. But whatever, that's his own thing. We're focused on Human Torch and the Sandman. He sees that the Fantastic Four flare signal has gone off. He goes to see Reed. He's giving a report on the Molecule Man case, which we covered a while back. He's in the middle of some experimentation, and kind of makes fun of Johnny for all the women that he's with, even though he's supposed to be, I still think, with Dory right now. So there's that. And he's also told him that the Sandman has just broken down to jail. You know, Human Torch, Johnny brings up how, he used to fight Spider-Man a while back. He's a real tough customer. Spider-Man barely beat him with an industrialized vacuum cleaner. And Reed calls Spider-Man Johnny's friend. Johnny quickly corrects him, even though we all know the truth is that they are friends now. Just very tsundere for each other, as it is. Not romantically, because those weirdos need to leave themselves out of the room, get themselves out of the room. But, because they are friends and men can be friends. It's weird. Or at least it shouldn't be weird. That's how we talk about this. So, Reed tells Johnny to go find Spider-Man because he's had experience against the Sandman. And Johnny's like, no, that's exactly the opposite of what I'm going to do. I'm going to be the guy. I'm not a messenger boy. I'm going to take out the Sandman. And Reed's like, oh, what are you going to do? He's just a teenager. And of course, after like hours of looking after the city, so at least they justify a little bit, he stumbles upon the Sandman and, goes up to fight him. Sandman tries to get away for a moment. In the midst of this, Human Torch looks for him, can't find him because, of course, Sandman can become a bunch of sand, and that's it. Then, of course, the reason why we're here, we get a panel of Spider-Man using a megaphone, a loudspeaker. Sandman, this is Spider-Man calling. Wherever you are, I dare you to show yourself, you sniveling coward. You may be able to lord it over the Human Torch, but this is Spider-Man talking. I beat you once, and I'm itching to do it again. And of course, the Sandman sees this on the news because if anything happens on the news, that's when it's going to happen. However, he's going off to go fight him. And it appears that Spider-Man has been beaten by the Sandman, except it's not. Because the Spider-Man costume, which the Human Torch somehow got, maybe I explained it. Maybe I skipped over it. Who knows? It doesn't really matter. Because it's a stupid ploy, but it works because comics. It's not Spider-Man under a mask. It's the Human Torch. They go in to fight each other. Sandman turns in the sand, gets it away from the torch. They shout some more. Some sprinklers go off, and Johnny's about to lose all of his flames. But it also turns him, the Sandman, into some mud, which one of the better stories out there is the Sandman Hydra Man story in the 200s of Spider-Man, like 217 or something like that. Where, he and Hydra Man form together into one muddy being. That's a lot of fun. But Sandman is eventually unable to use his sandier parts of himself because of all the water. He's able to maintain a human appearance, but Human Torch has some training and is able to beat him up in this form. We, of course, see Spider-Man in silhouette saying that if only he'd learned sooner about the battle with the Sandman against the Torch, he would have come sooner. He doesn't have a chance against that killer. Then he goes up and sees the Human Torch has beaten him, and well, that's it. So, Strange Tales 115, like the vast majority of Strange Tales, is just kind of one of those things that exists for a Strange Tales story. This is like if I were comparing this to a regular comic, maybe a 5. For a Strange Tales, it's like a 3. It is what it is. I mean, they're doing a good thing of having a hero fight someone else's villain. They know a little bit about them, but they haven't like confronted them themselves. That's why the Acts of Vengeance storyline, Forever From Now in the 80s, is one of my favorites. Like, I reread the Spider-Man and X-Men parts not too long ago because I love it, because it forces you to fight supervillains you wouldn't have normally done. You've got this cabal of supervillains working together to try and take down the other ones. That's perfect. But for this, it's just kind of womp womp. It exists. It's not terribly exciting. Johnny's plan is like Strange Tales stupidity. Like, it works because he's the hero of the story, not because he's smart. So, I don't want to like get you down and say you should never read Strange Tales, because it provides a lot of the characters that are, to this day, very important to the Marvel Universe. Of course, we got the Wizard. You got to see a little more of Johnny and the Thing working out in some of these when they realized that Johnny by himself wasn't good enough. You got like the eel, Plant Man. Who else? They do have that story with the acrobat pretending to be Captain America that will lead up eventually to Avengers 4 to get people excited to see him again. Like, it has its purpose. It's just not good. so, so I can recognize something having a place in a universe without saying that, oh, because it has a place, that means that I have to like it. Like, no, that's not how things work. So, moving on from there to our final tale of the day, we get to Amazing Spider-Man number 8. This is, of course, was released on October 8th, 1963. The story is The Terrible Threat of the Living Brain, written by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, penciled by Steve Ditko, inked by Steve Ditko, lettered by Artie Simak. Sorry for my ability to speak today. It's just horrendous. Edited by Stan Lee. And story number 2, Spider-Man Tackles the Torch, written by Stan Lee, penciled by Jack Kirby, inked by Steve Ditko, lettered by Sam Rosen, edited by Stan Lee. So, what else was happening in Marvel this month? Well, the Merry Marvelites in this month got to experience Journey into Mystery 99, where, as opposed to Cobra, Thor fights Mr. Hyde for the first time. Eventually, the two would team up against him to be far more formidable against the Thunder God. Here, Mr. Hyde, a great character. Cobra is okay, comparatively speaking. They're like friendly rivalry team up is really fun over the years, and even when they kind of break up as a villainous group, they come back together because you can't really have Mr. Hyde without the Cobra. And of course, Mr. Hyde is far more of a physical threat against Thor, not enough to where he's like the biggest threat in the world, but enough to like cause problems. So you have some improvement there. Then, of course, in Tales of Astonish 51, Giant Man and the Wasp re-encounter the human top, that, of course, once again being Whirlwind. Eventually, in Fantastic 422, speaking of re-encountering villains, we see the Mole Man return with Monster Island to face off with the Fantastic Four in a fun enough story. Your Mole Man stories are all over the place. Like, he's iconic because he's their number one person they fought against. Of course, with the classic cover of the monster coming out of the streets and then fighting against it. He's the reason behind all that. That's great. And of course, Strange Tales 116, I think, is when they start going into Johnny and Ben working together, Human Torch and Thing. They're mind controlled by the Puppet Master into fighting one another, because that's every single Puppet Master story ever. I'm sure that maybe there's some story out there that I'm forgetting, but it's like every time he shows up, that's a shtick. That's all he's about. He never thinks outside of the box. I'll have Hero A fight against Hero B or Hero C because. So, yeah. Then Tales of Suspense 49, Iron Man fights Angel of the X-Men when he gets irradiated by an atomic bomb test. It's so stupid. It's so stupid. It turns him like evil, and because of like his mutant genes or something, I can't remember. It was one of those, this exists so that I can hero fighting a hero, lets you and him fight. And eventually the Angel is now on the side of the Angels, once again, pun intended. So what we came here for today is Amazing Spider-Man number 8. We get a cover, not the best that's ever been done. We get what it promises, though. I mean, we get Spider-Man versus the Living Brain, Peter Parker's fight with Flash Thompson, which has been coming up for ever since Amazing Fantasy 15. And of course, the Human Torch is also going to appear, as well as the Fantastic Four. So, moving on with no preamble whatsoever, we are at the high school at Midtown High, where people are bringing in this gigantic, bulky green and yellow robot. It's green and yellow or green and purple or any combination thereof. That, of course, is how you know that thing is a villain. That's why Flash is dressed in green and purple. I just realized that. Flash is kind of like, that's this creepy looking Gizmo. Peter's like, hey, that Gizmo happens to be one of the most scientific marvels of the age, loudmouth. Flash, of course, pushes him, knocks his glasses off. He's big and brave when a teacher's not around. When a teacher is around, sorry. Peter's glasses then break. And of course, now Flash is on the hook for that, but he's not going to go out without a fight. Liz tries to step in between them. She's able to get Peter to go down, to talk him down. kind of agreed to a fight without agreeing to a fight, and I'll get that into a moment. But his spider sense goes off, and you know, their professor, Mr. Warren, who once again is the brother of Miles Warren, we'll find out forever from now. Um, yeah, introduces Mr. Petty, who created, you know, instead of is IBM around at this time? I see him, so they're probably doing something based off of that. Um, he introduces the machine as the living brain, and he's able to move around. It's really strong. Can think. It can ask a lot of questions. He asked if anyone would be able to assist him with this, and Mr. Warren, nominates Peter because he's got to call him out in front of everyone as the top science student in the class, which of course gets Flash angry, so he pushes him forward. And let's see. As they're going, Mr. Petty has explained to Peter how this works, but he catches on that Peter catches on really quick, and he praises him about that. He's read a lot about stuff like this. He's really interested in him because Peter is really big into science, and that science is not just one thing. There are many things, and Peter isn't. He's more of a jack of all trades, comparatively speaking. Obviously, Reed Richards is smarter than him in many regards, and is even more of a jack of all trades. But he's enough. His focus is still more chemistry than anything else. But he studied up on these things, and he's had to endure a lot of these things already, having already faced off against Doombot. So if that ever happens again, it's probably a smart idea to look this stuff up. And the two thugs that kind of brought it in are, of course, our bad guys, and the kids are all like, okay. Mr. Warren has asked them if they want to ask anyone a question. Of course, the question is naturally so. Who is Spider-Man? We've seen him show up at our school. Is it someone that we know? And Peter, of course, freaks out because his secret identity has been given away, and they give information from all different places about who he is. They give a general sense of his height, his weight. Flash gives up that he's been around this area a lot, and of course, Liz has, because she's the female, written by Stan Lee, has the most wonderful, heroic, glamorous man in the whole world. And of course, someone's J. Jonah Jameson pilled, and they say this is a neurotic nut. Peter then gives this information to the living brain. Has an imagined spot about how it says that Parker is Spider-Man, and these aren't the floating heads of guilt we'll get later on. Not really, but this is something that's kind of big in Spider-Man. You ever heard that phrase, floating heads of guilt? Whenever he's upset or thinking about something that could affect him and other people around him, there'll be the different, Aunt May will be there, Mary Jane and Gwen and Betty and J. Jonah Jameson and so on and so forth. Some of those characters haven't appeared yet, but you get what I'm saying in this panel here. So it just made me think about that. So the answer is being filtered out. The answer, however, has been given in a mathematical code symbol, which is one of the dumbest things I could have ever imagined. Would you not want? Maybe if you were working in spy work, you had people who were trained on this, that's what you would want. So instead of doing it himself or having the science teacher do it, Peter is told, so it's your job now for a question that someone else asked for you to decipher this symbolic language code when it could have just spelled out in English, which is what every character in that room speaks. Because comics, I guess. Then the two thugs are going to we're going to steal the brain, haha, because we're bad guys. Then Flash gets it in his head that he's going to be the one to decode it, and Peter's going to mess something out, which Peter's like, hey, you couldn't decode your own name unless someone spelled it out for you. And they get to a little scuffle there. And what does Mr. Warren do? Does he talk them out and say, hey, gentlemen, you get this any further, there's going to be detention? Or, hey, guys, this is not how we conduct business in the school here. No, this is what he decides to do. It's time for you two to settle your feud once and for all in the gym. And we're going to see in a moment, it's in a boxing match. Now, I want you to think for a second. Forget the fact that if any teacher did this today, starting a fight club between their students that they shouldn't mention, they'd be fired because someone would mention it. There would be video of this. There'd be people, praising someone else. How'd you get those injuries? Don't worry about it, Mom. Uh, so forget that for a second. His plan to settle the enmity between Peter and Flash, the muscle-bound hunk of a football player, and as far as he is aware of, the scrawny nerd, is to put them into a boxing match together. Does that make as much sense to you as it does to Mr. Warren? Well, if it does, you need to not be a teacher. You need not be anywhere around children. This is not how you solve things. Yeah, every now and then, boys can fight, and it has solved things. You need to let their aggression out. That's one thing. This is totally different. You are condoning, as an authority figure, something like this to happen. So everyone's expecting Peter to lose, especially like in the first minute of the first round, because why would they think anything different? You've let the scrawny nerd face off against the football player. Like, yeah, Peter is jacked far more than you would expect for a little nerd, but that's because he's Spider-Man. They don't know that he's Spider-Man. So Peter, wanting to take care of Flash, but at the same time, not wanting to give up his secret identity, is bobbing and weaving, and then clobbers Flash once and pulls his punch a lot. As he puts it, I put only the smallest fraction of my power into that blow, which is still a lot because he's Spider-Man. And at this point in time in his life, he could lift about 10 tons. I think they've increased that to about 20 tons when feats have been matched together and power scalers and all that mess. I don't really get into that. I've been used to saying 10 tons, but I think it's more like 20. And nowadays in modern comics, and he knocks Flash out flat right off of the boxing ring. And, he's going to go up against Peter again. The two thugs, they're trying to take out the living brain. And of course it goes, haywire in the midst of it because it's short-circuited, because once again, it's a robot in a Marvel comic or in any sort of media at this time. So while Peter and Flash are fighting, Peter can't stop his blow because Flash gets distracted by the living brain, and he knocks him out on the floor. He's got a dumb smile on his face, and people are angry at Peter because they think it's a sucker punch when his head was turned. Peter lifts Flash out of there and then goes to suit up exactly 30 seconds later as Spider-Man to take down the living brain. The webbing works a little bit on him, but it breaks through the webbing. It's wildly flailing around its robotic arms. He tries to get the other kids out of there. It knocks down a door that puts right on top of Spider-Man. He gets crushed underneath it for a bit. Then the two thugs knock on the same door, crushing Spider-Man underneath them. They try and get away. Spider-Man fights against the living brain, uses his web fluid to get away for a moment, destroys the door like it was a fly swatter, and he keeps him in moment, but the living brain is able to spin around, fling Spider-Man away. Once again, flails his arms around, goes after some kids. Spider-Man leaps onto the living brain, gets it out of the way just in time to divert its attention as they go down some stairs. They then fly out a window. Oh, sorry, no. Yeah, they do. And then they fly back in, and Spider-Man is able to disable it for a moment. The thugs are trying to leave the school. Flash Thompson wakes up. And he thinks, oh, the only reason Peter could have beaten him is he had like a brick in his glove or something. And he's going to go tie his shoes, get back out, put his clothes back on. And he takes out the thugs by accident when he bends over to tie his shoelace. And this is what makes everyone think that Flash is a hero. He did it on purpose. And Peter then brings up something and says, wait a minute, Flash, you're the one who wasn't around while Spider-Man was fighting the living brain. And you knocked out those two brother guys out as easy as pie, and you're just about Spider-Man's size. And everyone's like, wait, Parker's right. He could be Spider-Man. And you tried to get the brain's answer to Spider-Man's identity away from me. It all ties in, doesn't it? And Flash is like, no, I'm not Spider-Man. And they're like, oh, you deny that, wouldn't you? And then suddenly Flash's ego starts going up a little bit. And Peter has a nice line about, if they keep it up, Flash will start believing in it himself. He then leaves. he lost the paper with Spider-Man's identity on it and all the excitement, so no one will ever ask about that ever again. And he goes away happily as Peter Parker, and that's it for that story. Then moving on, in a terrible story, outside of some small moments, Spider-Man has gone all the way to where the Human Torch lives, which is not in regular New York. It's one of the suburbs nearby. It has its own name. I've forgotten it because it doesn't matter. I'm in a mood today. I don't know why. Oh, well. And sees this is where Doris Evans lives. He's going to visit and show her what she's missing by not dating Spider-Man. So even though he's currently trying to get with Betty right now, for the sake of not following continuity, we're going to say that he's also going after Doris Evans. Johnny, of course, is in this town because he lives here and has a reason to be here, unlike Spider-Man. In his fast car, moving around. And kind of how he used to have this old car next week. He found another car next week. Oh, if only I found it before Doris did. And Spider-Man comes in. We see a web bat that he made to mess around with Johnny, who then tries to break it up, and he's caught by the web, and he kind of stands in the door, all weird, like challenging Johnny. Which, by the way, it's still weird. If Dory was interested in him, wouldn't he have to give up his secret identity or something? Has he thought this one through? No, because the story hasn't thought about that. So Johnny flames on, tries to hit him with a fire arrow. Spider-Man uses some spider parachutes, singing a little show tune. Uses 2 web balls to knock the torch into some sand. He interrupts the ground around him, creates some fire rings to attack Spider-Man with. Spider-Man barely manages to get away, and of course, it's at that point we realize that the Fantastic Four has been here this whole time, sitting down and watching this fight go on. He thinks that they're trying to attack him too, so he webs up Reed Richards. Since Johnny's already not bad enough and flings him around into a rock, the Thing uses that same rock to attack Spider-Man with. He uses some web wings to glide away. And then, of course, Sue has managed to bring him down onto the ground with her invisibility. And she kneels down in front of him. She tries to calm him down because it's what women are for in early Marvel comics. We have to be smart and rational. We can't have any emotions of our own besides pleasing men. And says, "You're entirely too clever and adorable to be fighting with this. I bet you're as handsome as you are muscular under that mask." The Thing's line is perfect. "I'll cut it out, Sue. I just ate." Because blah. And of course, she's manipulating him and Johnny to make Johnny unhappy that she would be flirting with Spider-Man, and Spider-Man unhappy, because of all this mess. So what does he do? He leaves because they fought for no reason. Now he's going to leave for no reason, but he's going to leave behind a little heart in the shape of a web. A web in the shape of a heart for Sue, and she's going to take it very flatteringly. And that is the end of Amazing Spider-Man number 8. Wow. Not Stan and Steve's best work. Let me put it that way. The Living Brain is whatever. What is more important is the relationship between Peter and Flash, which is played out extremely well here. Yeah, it's stupid that you have a teacher putting them in a boxing ring to air out their feelings, but it works in the story because Peter gets some good hits in. He's wanted to deliver to Flash, but he couldn't as Peter because then that give it away who he was. But he can't do it as Spider-Man either because Flash idolizes Spider-Man. So this gives him an excuse to wallop him twice. That's pretty good, satisfying. The Human Torch stuff is just stupid, just absolutely stupid. It's the barest of excuses for it to happen in the first place. It's been however many weeks, months since Strange Tales Annual number 2, where Spider-Man went down that way to meet with the Torch and they became friends. And now in 115 and here they're pretending like they're not friends. There's a difference between being very tsundere about it and being just stupid. This is being stupid. They wanted them to fight, so they had to manufacture a reason for it to happen. Then the Fantastic Four show up for no reason whatsoever, except for Spider-Man to mess with them a little bit and flirt with Sue. and that's it. Which I've said before, like I love the relationship that he has with Sue as they grow up because she becomes like an older sister figure to him, and like all this romantic tension, as it were, dies, and that's for the better because she's supposed to be with Reed, he's supposed to be with Mary Jane, but Marvel or whatever, at least one of those two can be happy. And I do love his relationship with the Fantastic Four, but they start off so shaky, and I think they're just figuring these characters out. If I'm going to be charitable with them, but that's about as much as I can give. Yeah, that's it for this week. Next time, I do believe will be an Amazing Spider-Man. Actually, no, we're going to see a cameo appearance in Avengers 3 next time, then Amazing Spider-Man 9 and Amazing Spider-Man 10. And yes, that'll be our next episode. So thank you guys for all that you do. I love what you've been doing. We've gotten a very popular response overseas and in America, way more than I was ever expecting. So keep it up. Keep sharing the show. Leave a 5-star review in your podcasting platform of choice. If you're on YouTube, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And as well, remember, with a great podcast, there must also come great responsibility.